The Democratic Alliance is laying charges against government in terms of the Public Finance Management Act. The DA says various departments keep missing deadlines for submitting annual reports, which the party says is an important tool for holding public officials to account. The DA says it points to lack of accountability and adherence to legal requirements. For more, I'm joined by the DA's Dr. Annelie Lotriet. Dr. Lotriet, appreciate your time this evening. Can you provide specific examples of government departments or entities that have consistently missed their annual report submission deadlines, and obviously how this impacts their accountability and transparency, which are key factors?
Good evening, Hugo, and good evening to your viewers. Yes, this has been a recurring something that happens every year. Now, you say which entities and departments. Now, specifically, if we look at the major entities, because there are quite a few of them who have not submitted. But if we look, for example, at SAA, we all know SAA. Well, it's been quite a few years since they have submitted their annual reports. We look at entities such as DeNow, AlexCorp, NSFAS, the UIF. Now, these are very, very important entities, and most of them fall within the Department of State-Owned Enterprises. And this has a major impact on Parliament's ability to do oversight and to hold these entities and, in the end, the minister and the department accountable, because this is taxpayers' money. It's not just a private company somewhere. This is the taxpayers' money. And I think our problem is that we're going into a position now where we're going to look at the medium-term budget and all the recommendations, and the parliamentary committees can't do their work without these annual reports being submitted. So it really is a problem not only of not sticking to the requirements of the Public Finance Management Act, but also it is harming or putting a stumbling block in the way of Parliament to do its oversight.
Now, what legal provisions and requirements under the Public Finance Management Act are being invoked in the decision to lay charges against the government?
Well, you see, it is so serious that, the accounting officer can actually be convicted and could be given a fine or a sentence. That's how serious the PMFA is about being held accountable. So that is what a charge could mean in the end. So that is why we think that for so many years this has been happening. Entities and departments have been acting without impunity. No action has been taken, and we just cannot continue like this.
So how does the failure to submit annual reports in a timely manner affect the ability of Parliament and the public to assess, financial health performance and governance of government departments and entities? Yeah. Is there anything that they're trying to hide in the process, do you think?
Well, that's a possibility. It could be a combination of trying to hide something and also just a matter of incompetence, not knowing what to do or how to do it, and also just a question of just not really caring about it, because it is very serious. To give you an example, as I said, we're going into our medium-term budget cycle now, where all the portfolio committees have to discuss the annual reports of the different departments and the entities. And they have to look at the financial statements to see if there was any wasteful, fruitless expenditure, whether there's anything irregular in the statements. We have to wait for audited statements. And if we don't have that, we cannot hold those entities and the minister, the executive, to account. So it is critical for the work of Parliament, and it's really going to be a major problem for our portfolio committees now going into this process, because on the 1st of November, the Finance Minister is going to deliver his budget report and recommendations. And if we don't have the annual reports, it's almost impossible to make meaningful inputs and to hold the relevant people to account.
Now, the next question would be around, are there any specific consequences or penalties outlined in the PFMA for government accounting officers who failed to meet their annual reporting obligations? I mean, what is clear from what you've said in our opening statement is that for a number of these government departments, it's happened over a number of years.
Yes, and the sad part is that every time they are bailed out with taxpayers' money. but they just don't perform, and they don't submit their financials and their annual reports. So as I said earlier, that you actually can be convicted, and the sentence could be a fine or a jail.
So let's talk about you as the DA, and what steps have you taken to address these issues with the government accounting officers before deciding to lay the charges? It's almost like the last move that you possibly could make. Have you exhausted all other channels before turning to the courts?
Well, the thing is that we can only comment on this once the date has been passed that these have to be submitted. Now, for years and years, we have expressed our concern about this, and this year we just decided that this is unacceptable. We can't carry on like this. The ministers make excuses. There are promises of these reports being submitted next year. But no company can operate like that. In the private sector, you would have closed your doors by now. So we have just decided that, look, they missed the deadline again. And as I said earlier, these are the main entities that we are focusing on, but there are a number of smaller entities that the public don't even know of. But it's the principle that we now have to address. Because if we say nothing, if we do nothing, it's going to happen again next year. And we all know the country is in a dire financial state. And then we have entities and departments just not doing their bit.
So this lax attitude, if you would call it that, what are the implications on the general running of the economy and the country if there is no desire or certainly no urgency in submitting these reports or the ability, as you suggest, that for in some instances it might actually be a case of incompetence?
I think it all plays a role in the financial situation we find ourselves in the country because no one is held accountable. If we look at the major state-owned entities, let's take SAA. It's been, 4 or 5 years, 2018, since they've last submitted. We know what's happening there. It's a mess. But the problem is we need a transparent government. We need entities, departments, and ministers who hold their own departments to account because it's public money. It's the taxpayers' money. And if there's no transparency, we can work with the reports. We can ask questions, but we can't get to the detail of whether they have met all their objectives. All their performance areas, what they've indicated and what they've planned. We can't measure it. So in other words, everything is just in the dark and, basically like I'm also now sitting in the dark with load shedding. And that is where we find ourselves in this country. So it has to stop. And I think that ministers have to now take responsibility for these entities who just are not caring enough or don't have the capacity to actually work in favour and in service of the public.
Well, we certainly appreciate parliamentarians such as yourself putting up with the dark and coming on to News at Prime to speak to us. Now, how does the DA plan to ensure that this legal action does not become politicised and remains focused on accountability and adherence to legal requirements? Because we're almost certain that there's going to be a bit of a slinging match in the next day or two where the issues are taken away from that which you raise to that which becomes political.
Well, it's the nature of politics that obviously this will be made into a political matter, but in fact it isn't. Our action is in the interest of our citizens. So we won't make it political in the sense that we want to trumpet our own abilities, but we are there to show that we actually care, that we find this kind of attitude and behavior unacceptable, and that we are tasked. If you are a parliamentarian, you take an oath that you will do everything as far as you can to serve the citizens of this country and the constitution of this country. And if you serve the constitution, you serve and you comply with the act. So where we see wrongdoing such as this and this kind of attitude of not caring, we have to speak out. And we have spoken out, and I think it's now time that we actually take action.
Dr. Lotriet, the expectation is that the Auditor General would crack the whip, so to speak, in issues around this. What role is she playing, or is she playing any role in this adherence or non-adherence?
The Auditor General does play a role in the sense that we are informed. We also get the audited statements. The Auditor General also provides reports. So she does play a very important role. But it goes up to a point. We're also going to ask the Auditor General in terms of Section 65(2) of the PMFA to issue a special report so that we can see if there isn't anything that we can do from the Auditor General side to put more pressure on these entities to submit in time and to make it possible for us as parliamentarians to do our job.
Now, a lot of this is obviously what leads to mistrust between the government and those that are governed. How does the DA envision the broader impact of this action on the state of governance and public trust in government institutions in South Africa?
I think the trust is already at a very low point, if we're honest. If you look at what the general public think of entities such as Eskom, such as SAA, and what we now have is just confirmation of that. So I don't think it's going to basically make people more distrustful. I think the distrust is there already. We are just providing more information about this and taking some action about this. And the main thing is that this can change. It doesn't have to be like this. Because we really want state-owned entities that function, that play such a critical role in the lives of every citizen, the financial status of the country, and our future. So we deem this to be an extremely important exercise in the interest of everyone.
So how do you expect this all legally to pan out?
Well, this will depend. We will lay the charges, and then the legal course will take its course. The legal side will take its course. So we can't preempt anything. We're taking the first step.
Dr. Annelie Lotriet from the DA, appreciate your time this evening. Thanks so much for speaking to us.